All right, one of my favorite lessons, simplify and use square roots. All right, so there's some things that I'm going to tell you on this page, and you might be going, duh? So anyways, just bear with me for a little bit. Okay, so if n squared, n stands for a number, okay, equals a number m, then m is the square of n. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. If n squared equals m, then n is the square root. Just n is the square root of m. Okay, now I'm going to explain this one just a little bit better here in just a second. Okay, some more vocabulary that we need to get out of the way. All right, so the radical sign is this thing right here, okay? This thing that looks like that is the radical sign. The number that's underneath it is called the radicand, all right? Just some vocabulary. All right, and you can read this as the square root of m. Just so you know, if there is no number written up here, that number is assumed to be a 2. We do not write it. We say it because we say square root, okay? But just so you know, it is assumed to be a 2, all right? So then it says if m is equal to n squared, then the square root of m equals n, and that's for n's that are bigger than 0, greater than or equal to 0. And it says that we're dealing with the positive number because if you take the square root of 4, technically you could say that that is 2 and negative 2, but really if we're looking for the negative, we would put a negative sign out front, okay? All right, so it really does help you to know the perfect squares, at least up through 15, okay? So the square root of 1 is 1. The square root of 4 is 2. Square root of 9 is 3. Square root of 16 is 4. Square root of 25 is 5. Square root of 36 is 6. Square root of 49 is 7. Square root of 64 is 8. Square root of 81 is 9. Square root of 100 is 10. Square root of 121 is 11. Square root of 144 is 12. Square root of 169 is 13. And square root of 196 is 14. Square root of 225 is 15. All right, it helps if you memorize these perfect squares, okay? These numbers that are the radicands in each of these are called perfect squares because they're not a decimal, okay? They're a whole number whenever you find the square root. All right, so on part A, let's find the square root of 36. Well, that is 6. What number times itself gives you 36? On part B, the square root of 196 is 14. Okay, now notice on part C, there's a minus out front. So that means we want the negative of the square root of 81, which is negative 9. And then on part D, we also want the negative of this one. So our answer will be negative. Square root of 289 is 17. Okay, now if you don't have a calculator that has a square root button, you should probably get one. If you need one, talk to me and we can probably work something out, okay? But also, if you turn your phones, if you're using a smartphone, if you're using the calculator on your phone, turn it sideways, you get more options, okay? So you would probably be able to find the square root button on there that way. But still, I like calculators better that are real calculators, not the one on your phone. Sometimes those can be difficult to deal with. Okay, what is the difference between what we had before? What is the difference between, let's see here, this and this? Okay, so that's a really good question. This one gives us a negative 13. This one down here is no real number. Okay, so you'll learn about imaginary numbers in another class, but in this class we're just going to say no real number or not a solution or something like that, because there is no such number times itself that would ever give you a negative number. All right? So on part A, no real number. But on part B, notice the negative is on the outside of the radical. So on part B, our answer would be -8. Notice the difference. This one, the negative is under the radical. This one, the negative is on the outside of the radical. Huge difference there. All right, now these may look very similar to you, but they're really two very different answers. On part A, you take the square root of 25, which is 5, plus the square root of 144, which is 12, and then you add those numbers together and you get 17. On part B, you have to add the numbers together first, so you get the square root of 169, and then you take the square root of 169, which is 13. So notice two very different answers. All right, so on this one, I'm not going to really have you do a whole lot with estimation, but I do expect you to have enough number sense to understand that the square root of 5 falls between the square root of 4 and the square root of 9, okay? I do expect you to understand that. So even though you can't give me a really good estimation, you do know that the square root of 5 is between 2 and 3, okay? You know that. It has to be. It's a decimal of 2 point something. I don't expect you to be able to know what the something is, but I do expect you to know that the square root of 5 does fall between 2 and 3, as does the square root of 6, as does the square root of 7, as does the square root of 8. Okay, I don't expect you to know what the decimal is, but I do expect you to know that it is a decimal of 2 point something. All right, so the square root of 60, let's see here. I know a perfect square, so the square root of 60 would be between the square root of 64, right? Because this is a perfect square number. And it would be between the square root of 49, right? Okay, so square root of 49 is 7. The square root of 64 is 8. So I know that the square root of 60 is between 7 and 8. It's not more than 8. Okay, it is more than 7, but it's not more than 8. So I know that the decimal will be 7 point something something. I don't know what those decimals are. I couldn't tell you without a calculator, but I do know that the square root of 60 is 7 point something. Okay, now if you want to know what that is, here's what you want to hit on your calculator, okay? And again, I'm using the TI-30X2S calculator. So I would hit the second button, and then the x squared button. If you notice that just above the x squared button is a radical like that. And so we want the second and the x squared button. So second, x squared, and then I would hit 60 and then enter. And it tells me that it is 7.745966692. Okay? And so I was right. It is 7 point something, all right? Okay, so that's how you estimate. Now, sometimes it will say round the square root of 17 to 2 decimal places. Now, I know that square root of 17 is bigger slightly than the square root of 16. So I know that this will be a decimal of 4 point something. I just don't know exactly what the something is. So on my calculator, I'm hitting second, the x squared button, which is the radical button. And then I'm going to type in 17, and then I'm going to hit enter. Okay, so second, square root 17, enter, and I get 4.123105. I'm just going to not finish writing that because we're only rounding to 2 decimal places. That means I need to look at the third decimal to decide what to do with that 2. Since this is 3, I just drop everything. So rounded to 2 decimal places, this would be 4.12. All right, so this is where we need to talk about closets and pairs of shoes, all right? So whenever you are pulling out, whenever we're doing like the square root of 16, we are asking ourselves, what number times itself would give you 16, right? So if you look at this, 4 times 4 is 16. And so whenever you write the answer, you only write one of those down, one of the pairs down, okay? So whenever we have x to the 6th, we ask ourselves what times itself would give you x to the 6th. Well, that would be x to the 3rd times x to the 3rd. So the answer to this would be x to the 3rd, okay? All right, now let me show you the fast and easy way. When you are dealing with variables, okay, take this variable, divide by this number out here, which in this case is a 2. We don't usually write it, but it is there. So that would give you your quick answer there, okay? Again, take this number, divide by 2. Now, remember earlier whenever I said closets and pairs of shoes? Okay, consider this radical to be your closet, okay? And consider this to be the number of shoes that you have in your closet. If you have 6 shoes in your closet, pending that your dog didn't run away with something strange and you have an unmatched pair, if you have 6 shoes, how many pairs should you have? You should have 3 pairs, okay? So think of this right here. If you have 16 shoes inside the closet, how many pairs are there? There are y to the 8th. There are 8 pairs. So part B would be y to the 8th. Again, cheap and easy way, take this number, divide by 2. Okay, so take the square root of 16, which is 4. And then if you have 2 shoes, how many pairs do you have? You only have 1 pair. There you go, you're done. All right, on this one, we want the negative answer, okay? So our sign will be negative. Square root of 81 is 9. If you have 2 shoes in your closet, you have 1 pair. There you go, you're done. All right, let's take the square root of 36, which is 6. If you have 2, let's call them x pairs of shoes. 2 shoes, we'll call them x's. Then you only have 1 pair, right? If you have 2 shoes that are y's, you only have 1 pair. So that's what this would be, 6xy. All right, take a look at this one. The square root of 64 is 8. Now, if you have 64 shoes in your closet, how many pairs do you have? You actually have 32 pairs. All right, square root of 121 is 11. If we have 6 A shoes in there, then how many pairs of A shoes do we have? We've got 3. If we've got 8 B shoes in our closet, how many pairs of B shoes do we have? 4. There you go, you're done. All right, that's it for this video. It was a short one. I hope it made sense. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. You know how to reach me.